Welcome to the Seeking Wisdom podcast. I'm Brian Beckcom, your host. I'm really excited to interview my next guest. Ben Glass has been one of the top 5 most influential people in my professional and personal life. I first met Ben over a decade ago when he started Great Legal Marketing. I was one of the founding members of Great Legal Marketing. Great Legal Marketing is one of the nation's most well-known legal marketing companies in the United States, but it's more than a legal marketing company. It's a company that coaches, teaches, and helps small businesses, entrepreneurs, and business owners grow their businesses, improve their profits, and make the employees and owners happier. Ben also owns Ben Glass Law, one of the most prominent mid-sized law firms in the Washington, D.C., Virginia area. Ben is the author of countless books and hundreds of articles. His latest book, Play Left Fullback, is currently one of the top-ranked books on Amazon in its category. Ben is also the father to 9 children, 4 of whom he and his wife Sandy adopted from China through the Love Without Borders program. And Ben is also an accomplished soccer player and an in-demand soccer referee. Ben and I talk in this podcast about how small business owners and entrepreneurs can not only survive the pandemic and the lockdown, but also thrive during this process and make their personal lives and businesses better. And now I give you Ben Glass.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on. These are important calls in important times, I think. So first of all, as you mentioned on the intro, dad to 9. So that's a big deal for us. Our youngest just turned 18. And the funny thing is, you probably have met Sandy. It's like a couple of months ago. It's like, it's getting quiet around the house. And now we've got 5 of them back in the house because we've got 3 college kids who are working very hard actually with their telelearning. And so that's the most important thing. For almost 40 years, I've been a personal injury and disability attorney here in the Fairfax, Virginia. So we're right outside of Washington, D.C. Small practice, but we're a good, strong regional presence here. And about 15 years ago, I started a second business, really coaching lawyers, mom and pa, who are running law offices, serving consumers. Typically, the folks that we serve are not typically the ones you see a lot on TV and billboards and stuff. They're running businesses, and so I do that nationally. I do a lot of coaching and mentoring of small biz here in Northern Virginia. So we do a bunch of things that are all sort of win-win relationships where we're just trying to always learn from each other. So things, it's just always being a forever learner. It's actually one of our core values here. So
So 9 kids, that's a lot of kids. And I definitely want to talk about how you manage that. But just to be clear up front, you have a law firm, but then you also have another business called Great Legal Marketing, which I think I was one of the charter members of, actually.
Yeah, probably,
yeah. And but Great Legal Marketing is not just about running a law business. It's not just about running a legal business. You actually coach a lot of small business owners. And one of the reasons I wanted to get you on my podcast today was there's a lot of small business owners out there, I think, right now that are struggling and that are worried about the future. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And so you actually have spent the better part of a decade coaching small business owners through all sorts of issues. So I guess one of the things that I think the listeners, particularly the small business owners, will be very interested in is how do you, as a kind of an expert in coaching small businesses, how do you look at situations like this? How do you adjust to the new normal? Like what are you doing right now with your businesses?
Yeah, so it's definitely a new normal. And I think, as you know, from us being good friends for many years, Ben always starts at the mindset side of things. And, the very first place we go is, okay, what's in my control and what's not in my control? So if you're in a business where the government has completely shut you down, that's really, really hard. Okay, we get it. And lots of people, unfortunately, are in that circumstance. But even there, you have choices. You have a choice to be optimistic and to try, or you have a choice to stop. And we're not here to judge whichever choice one makes. And there are, perhaps reasons for going either way. But I tend to play with and hang out with people who choose to figure out what I do have control over and figure out what can I do today to maximize my opportunities and my chances. Again, what happened yesterday is nothing but a neuron running around in our head right now. What may happen tomorrow and 6 and 12 months down the line are really just neurons. I mean, this all changes every day. So I think it starts there. So what I hear a lot on calls and podcasts that I've been on, either presenting or being an attendee with small biz owners, is that the good news is that there's a lot of positivity and optimism in that world. So I do believe that it will be the entrepreneurs and the small businesses who I kind of lead America back out of this, for sure. And so that's good news. A lot of folks are, I also hear this, and it may sound weird or funny or strange for these times, but many people are saying, I'm thankful, or at least acknowledge with gratitude this break. There have been many things about my business that I have been wanting to change, wanting to get right, wanting to think more about, and now it's been forced upon me. Again, you don't have control over it. Your idleness in your actual doing of the business may have been forced upon you. But I hear a lot of people, lawyers and other small business owners, say, wow, we are working on our marketing. We are refining our systems. We are cementing the relationships we have with patients, clients, customers, whatever it is. We are spending the time to be better organized as a leadership team. Again, these are all things that you have control over, and at the very least, Brian, can give you some sense of accomplishment on the day. In my two businesses, so first in a law practice, like yours, the fortunate reality is we have a lot of work. We're good at what we do. Like you, we see a lot of interesting cases and people and things. So we're not selling, we're not selling a salad at lunchtime, which you may or may not be able to do. We're doing legal services, and so we're well positioned. In fact, in our firm, we're looking at the opportunity that 3 months ago it was really hard to hire people. Everybody was employed.
Yeah.
Now there's going to be a lot of really good people for whom we could develop a win-win relationship. So that's one of the things that we're doing. So cementing your relationships with whoever it is that pays you to for your product or your service. The thing I think is really important right now is cementing that relationship and being brutally honest with your employees. Now, if you've got a good business and you have built up culture and core values and systems, and you've hired and fired the right people over time, I think you're in a far better place than if this was chaotic for you before, because the stress level is now up in many businesses, and so it's hard. And so our reinforcing message to our employees is, you're here because you're good at what you do, right?
Yeah.
And we're good, and we're in a good shape. We've got, as I say, sort of a long runway in terms of our financial ability to sustain this coronavirus. But if you're not, what employees want is your authenticity. They don't want your BS. They want your best information. And so one of the businesses I coach here in Northern Virginia is I won't name the brand, but they do quick change oil, right? So it's that genre of business. And the man and his wife who own the place, they have about 6 or 7 units. And so a lot of their employees are younger, blue collar, hardworking guys and gals. And they have built their whole business on, this is so interesting, Brian, on educating their people just to make them better, to understand finances, understand the value of education, the value of forever learning, the value of skill acquisition. And that's really what their business is about. They happen to sell oil changes, their business is about their people.
Yeah.
And so they have been very proactive in terms of getting the information about the different relief programs that are available to employees, to workers, getting accurate information to them, because, you know, you and I, we're smart. We know where to click. We know where to go find stuff. We know how to pretty much how to differentiate between what's truthful and what's not. And we know a lot about a lot of stuff, and a lot of business owners in that position. And so they're looking after their employees. But mostly what your employees want, I think, is your authenticity, your honesty, because that's really hard for other places.
Yeah. So I think this point about mindset is really, really important. So I want to spend a little bit more time on it. But I will say this. When I started, when you started Great Legal Marketing and I started reading all your materials, I could come up with 5 or 6 different things where you really shifted my mindset. And one of the things I'm thinking about right now is you've always preached that the most important people in your business, in a small business, are your employees, not your clients, not other people. Some people, it's their bankers or whoever. You've always really focused on the well-being of the employees. And I think your idea there is, without good employees, you can't get any of the work done in the first place. Plus, it's the right thing to do. So, when this pandemic first came down and we knew how significant it was going to be, Vuk and I got together and we decided immediately that our number one priority in our business would be to make sure our employees were taken care of to the extent we could. We were going to put our employees above everybody else. And I attribute the thinking there in large part to your teaching and what you've done. So let's talk a little bit more about what people can do. So like you said earlier, there's probably a lot of people that are anxious. There's people that are nervous. There's people that don't know. None of us really knows what the future is going to hold, but some people are more nervous about that than others. So can you give our listeners, whether they be business owners or employees of small businesses, some concrete ideas from a mindset perspective about, maybe some of the things that you preach about, some of the things that you do, some of the principles that you run your business and your life by? Can you talk just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think as from the business owner's perspective, as Ben, the owner of 2 businesses, my number one job is to hire the right people, put them in the right seats, and then wherever they are when they join us is to grow them. I mean, that's our real competitive advantage. Yes, we're good lawyers. Yes, you and Vuk are great lawyers, and you've got great lawyers who work for you. The public has a hard time differentiating between a good lawyer and a bad lawyer. But the public, whoever's interacting with you, will remember that experience. And so the more that you and I and other business owners can raise up our people to do all of the running of the business, it frees up the owner to do the very high level thinking, the strategic planning, either about a particular case or just about the business as a whole. So I think that's the most important thing. Now, great to have started that 5 or 10 years ago, right? But if you've never given deep thought to that, to the asset you have, the equity you have in your folks, I think that's something you've got time and space to do now. We've become a great fan of the Entrepreneur Operating System. And a really good book, Brian, is a book called How to Be a Great Boss. And so it talks about this now from the from the owner's level down. I think from the employee's standpoint, you are going to see the value. So this is now me talking to high schoolers and college kids and young folks in the professional world and the working world trying to get that set. Your job is not just to come in and to deliver what you're paid to do, right? In exchange for an hourly rate or an annual salary or anything like that. Your job is always to try to make yourself invaluable to the employer. Seth Godin talks a lot about this. I think Michael Gerber to some extent talks about this, but being curious, being proactive, learning new skills, being the linchpin. So Seth Godin called, and actually he has a book called Linchpin. I think that's actually the name of the book, but it's all about how to make it so that if the business has to lay off or fire people because of the, in our case, this pandemic, that you're not first to go. And
Yeah.
you're going to be first to go if you're just there to work for the hourly wage or the annual salary. You're not indispensable. You're absolutely replaceable on that. So we often talk about thinking outside the box and going above and beyond, but it's really true that the folks here, I've got a woman here in the law practice who came to me and she started working as a $20 an hour researcher for background articles that I was writing. And now she runs $1 million a year department, and she makes, a lot of really good money. She's not a lawyer, but
Nice.
she was very proactive about and curious. And she said to herself, here's what I see in this vertical in the business. How could I grow it? And then she would sell those programs to me, really.
We've got a similar situation in our office. We hired somebody to work basically as a receptionist a couple years ago, and before I knew it, this person, Carlos Villarreal, had taken on so many additional responsibilities and was so good at them. And then I found out that he had a marketing degree. That he basically runs a lot of our marketing. And so, Vuk and I have always been, when it comes to employees, give me a smart, motivated person. And I don't really care about their experience that much, because a smart, motivated person will figure it out. They'll figure out a way to do things. Ben, one of the other mindset ideas that you gave me long ago that I really would that I think about a lot, and I'd like you to talk about a little bit, is, and I think it's particularly important in situations like this where we don't know what the new rules are going to be, we don't know what the new normal is going to be, but you've always had this saying that you've written a lot about: who made that rule, right? And
right.
So when I think about that, I think about it's basically saying conventional wisdom can lead you astray. And if you're in a small business in an industry where there's kind of a certain way of doing things, an accepted way of doing things, if you're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, you're not going to stand out at all. Whereas if you're constantly asking who made that rule, why are we doing it this way, both inside your business and in your industry, you really tend to stand out a little bit more. So can you talk a little bit more about your famous saying, who made that rule, and apply it to this situation that we're in right now?
Yeah, I mean, so many people think that there's kind of this box, that if you're in this business, everything is played within this box. And yet nothing great was ever invented or discovered by repeatedly looking inside the box. Yeah. All discoveries have been by people who wondered, what if I ventured across this line? And the important thing is they do so with the growth attitude of, wow, what if this idea over here I start really takes off, rather than the fear attitude of, gee, I might invest time, energy, and money over here and it might not work. So great inventions, great advancements in any profession or in any type of business come from going outside of the box. And so, the thing that I teach to lawyers, because lawyers will say to me, well, we can't do that in our state because we have a rule. And my response always is, well, show me the rule. Yeah. And I swear, Brian, like 70% of the time they come back and they go, oh,
there's no rule.
It doesn't really say what I thought it said, right? Yeah. And then the other 30%, there's ways to accomplish what you want to accomplish without breaking the rules, because I'm not in favor of doing things that'll like lose my license, right? Right. All right, so now current situation is many of the rules are gone.
Yeah.
we talk about what happens when the country gets restarted, and we use the phrase the new normal but now it's for real. So I finished up a book that is available on Amazon just a couple weeks ago called Play Left Fullback. I think you've got one there.
Yeah, I got a copy right here, and I definitely want to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, but
actually,
the point I would make here is a subtitle is about, breaking the status quo. Well, while we were watching, the status quo got broken, right? It got changed. And so as a business owner now, there's so many, if you think about it, so many potential opportunities. So, for example, the restaurants that we frequent here, we go a lot, the servers know our names, we know their names, and we did virtually no like takeout business before. Well, right now they're forced to do only takeout. So if they're smart, they're going to figure out how, when the place opens back up and people can come back and eat, how do they keep the rhythm of this new area, this new revenue stream that they're doing? How do they keep that going? So they were forced to discover a really great way to do takeout in an area where they thought, they probably never thought before that they even wanted to go there. And so there's going to be a lot of adventure moving forward. And the winners are going to be those who think, I'm going to make this work. I know I'm probably going to have an idea and fail, have an idea and fail, have an idea and fail. Let's talk to some people. Here's something that works a little bit. Oh, great. Oh, one of the other big things I've always talked about is going outside of your industry. So if you're running a bakery, you see somebody running auto detailing who's crushing it coming out of this, like that'd be a good person to hang out with and at least be curious. Like, who do you use for your marketing? How do you upsell people? Gee, take some of those ideas back into the bakery. So I've always been an advocate of like cross fertilization across industries.
Yeah, you've been. There's a bunch of sayings that you've had, and a bunch of philosophy on all this stuff that's stuck in my head. And one is, and I hear this all the time, I can't do that in my business. My business is different than other businesses. And you and I both know, because we've been thinking about this for so long, when you really boil it down, all small businesses are kind of about the same thing, right?
They really are.
And there's small businesses that are in industries other than ours that are knocking it out of the park every day. And you've always preached that it would be silly, it would be ridiculous not to look at what these other small businesses are doing. So one of the things that we're doing here in Houston is we're not only focused on the future of VB attorneys and how we can help people, and there's going to be a lot of different kinds of legal claims. Business interruption claims may be a big deal, and navigating people through. One of the things that we've done over the last couple of weeks that I think is that we can provide a good service for is we're trying to navigate small businesses and individuals through all these government programs, evictions. There's going to be all these new rules, and consumers and small businesses are going to need some help navigating this stuff. So we're kind of positioned, perfectly for this. So let's talk about. I'm glad you brought this up, because I do have a copy of your book, Play Left Fullback. For some reason, there we go. And I think this came out about a month ago.
March 24 it came out.
Yeah. March 24. Okay, so a little less than a month ago. This is Play Left Fullback by Ben Glass. And I think right now is it the #1 book in its category on Amazon?
It goes up and down. Depends on what day you look at it. Yeah. And
well, after this podcast, it's going to be #1 for a while.
Yeah, and the quick point I would make about that is, although it is written for the legal industry,
tell us, Ben, before not to interrupt you, Ben, but tell us that what's the meaning of the title? Tell us the story behind the title.
Well, the meaning of the title is, yes. So when I was 12 years old, and I was, so this is the 70s, right? And I was a halfway decent soccer player, and we're going to my first, people are all familiar with travel baseball, travel basketball. Well, this is like the very beginning of any of that stuff in sports. In Northern Virginia, we're going to my first tryout, and my dad says, when you get there, tell the coach when he's going to ask and tell me to play left fullback. And I said to Dad, I said, well, I'll do that, but let me ask you a couple of questions first. I said, I'm right-footed. He goes, yeah, I know. He goes, you know, I've never played defense. He goes, yeah, I know. He says, you know, I like to score goals. He says, yeah, I know. It's all right. So why are we going to tell him to play left fullback? He says, because no one else is going to want to play that position, and you'll at least get on the team, right?
Yeah.
Principle being to show up differently. And he said, and then we'll figure it out afterwards. And so it was great. And as the story I tell in the book is, you know, we were 12 years old at that point, and the team morphed over the years. When we were 18, we were national champions. And I was fortunate to play with a lot of really good players. Everyone on our national championship team went to play D1 soccer, except one guy who went to play with Pele and pros in New York. So yeah, but the principle is, okay, engineer dad telling me who's good probably would have made a team anyway, but here, let's show up differently, which is a great business principle. I mean, none of us want to be viewed as commodities. I mean, even the guy selling like branded T-shirts or something, there's ways to stand out in the marketplace different from all the other guys and gals selling, you know, novelty T-shirts.
Yeah.
And you have to give, you know, our argument is you give deep thought to this.
Yeah. So what tell us, and I encourage people to go buy this book. I've read it. It's a great book, and it's got a lot of wisdom in it. So, but tell us in kind of in summary fashion, like what drove you to write this book, and what are the message that you're trying to get through with this book?
So again, I think this translates to all businesses, but in legal, in 2016, a big national report came out that said, oh my gosh, there's too many lawyers that are unhappy with where they are. They're not satisfied. And as a result, they're stressed out, and they do drugs and alcohol too much, and they're depressed. And the national folks that sitting up in their high towers were shocked by this. I said, well, how could you be shocked unless you never hung out with lawyers? And so they answered that, what they call the wellness issue, by some good ideas, the value of eating well, exercise, meditation, all those things that you and I do, but they completely ignore, in my view, the most powerful path to wellness, which is build a good business that's profitable, that has work that you're interested in doing, and doing it with people that you really like. Because if you have that, and again, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or you're running the dry cleaning store. If you have a business that's profitable, interesting work for you, with people that you like, great customers, clients, patients, you're going to lessen the chance that you are going to be unhappy with your life. And so the legal profession, at least, wants to not just ignore, but to oftentimes, I think, advocate against the whole concept that we should be involved in profit-making businesses. I believe that when I'm profitable and happy, I better serve the client. When you have a great team, Brian, of lawyers and non-lawyers who like showing up on Monday to work at your law firm, your clients and the city of Houston, and you guys do some national work, they're all better served than if you and Vuk were miserable. And I know that you and Vuk are not miserable.
Yeah, you know, you've always, and I really, among a lot of other things I really love about some of the things you talk about, you don't pretend like, as a small business owner, that it's not important to make money. Of course it's important to make money. It's important to have a profitable business. That's kind of the entire point. That's not the only point. You know, like what you're talking about is, if your only goal is to make money and you forget about working with good people on things that you're interested in, then you're probably not going to be very happy.
Yeah.
But you have to make money in order to run the business. So it's important to focus. You've always talked about how it's important to generate income in a business. And then after that, you can set up all the systems and the culture and make sure you hire the right people and go from there.
Not only that, but when you and I are making money, then we can take on and can afford to take on those cases that might have a cause with not a lot of money. And you and I both help a lot of people who could not otherwise afford a lawyer, because again, they're bringing something that's interesting to us. We've got the time and space and capital to pursue it. And so we both do cases that that we find interesting and cause-worthy that we wouldn't be able to do if we were worried about whether the lights could be turned on next Monday or not.
Absolutely. I've always thought that if I, as a lawyer, couldn't, you obviously can't help everybody, but if you have a good business, you can get involved in some cases that on maybe a pro bono basis, or maybe cases where you just know up front that you're not going to get a lot of money, but the cause is important. Like the issue is important. And if you,
yeah, nothing important in the law was ever like created by people just staying within their comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
All of the great inroads have been by people taking on cause cases. If you got a good business, you're able to afford the energy to go do that.
I just released yesterday my latest blog article, which was, if you want to be happy, do hard things. Which the basic point of that is get out of your comfort zone. If you stay in your comfort zone too long, you'll get lazy and upset and depressed. If you push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, you will be happy with whether you succeed or not. Now, so there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this that have heard of you, that have heard of Ben Glass Law or Great Legal Marketing or both, but there's probably a lot of people that haven't. So there's people, I'm sure, that are asking, how does a guy run a law firm, another basically full-time marketing and consulting business, raise 9 kids? I think you also work as a soccer referee and you write books.
Not right this month, but yeah.
Yeah, not this month, but you're a pretty well-known soccer referee in the Virginia area. How do you possibly manage all that stuff? And you've been doing this for 15 years. How do you manage all that stuff?
Well, look,
what are your secrets?
It's a great question. And so for those who don't know me, 5 kids, same wife for all of them, 5 children biological to us. And then we entered the world of international adoption. So we have 4 children from China. And so that almost doubled the size of the family. But the secret is I'm comfortable in my own skin saying no to stuff that's not interesting to me. All right. And so, as you know, Brian, people who do things and become successful get asked to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And the philosophy that I have learned to live by is that I have a certain set of God-given talents, interests, experience, and I'm happy playing in that pool and not going too far outside of things that I'm not good at. So that's number one. And I think, the easiest way to be unhappy is to never know how to say no to people who ask for your time. So I've been big, as you know, on militant time management.
Yeah.
I will do well for you, but you don't have 24/7 access to me. And I think so. I think that's important, and that kind of gets back to another overall philosophy, which is living by principles and not by whim, not being buffeted about by everything that I could, probably be interested in and want to go and write on Twitter about and all these things. Being really focused on what I want to achieve for my family, and I've always said I want to achieve the financial and emotional security of my family. So that's central. So everything I do and try to do is geared somehow to that.
Yeah.
CrossFit athlete. I want to live for a long time in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I write books. I want to get some of this information out so that others who maybe don't hear it in the schools anymore, who maybe don't hear it at the dinner table and the breakfast table in their own families, can know that they're special. They're born and then develop a set unique to them, interests, talents, desires, and it's okay. I mean, I believe that what you're born to do is to take that set and explode it, share it with the world in your way. I'm the guy, I often joke, I'm not a tool guy. Yeah. I would get hurt in the aisles of Home Depot.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with not trying to build something with a saw and hammer. But I can create a lot of cool stuff, and I can influence, a lot of people, starting with my family. And I think that I mean, just real shortcut. I've sent 7 kids off to 6 different Virginia universities.
Nice.
They've all been the right school for the right kid. Sandy and I did not stress a lot about, what school you go to or even what you're going to go study. Our job was to launch kids who were curious, who knew how to form relationships, and who knew how to pursue knowledge, not just education per se, but real knowledge. I think we've done a decent job.
So you said a number of really insightful things there. You talk about the value of being able to say no. And there's a great saying by a guy named Derek Sivers: if it's not hell yes, it's no. And so the point he's trying to make there is, if this is not something that I'm really excited about, then I'm going to say no to just about everything. But Ben, you made another good point. In order to say no to things, you have to have a philosophy, or you have to have a set of governing principles. So when those decisions come up, or those things you might want to get involved in come up, you basically have a compass already in place that tells you what you want to do. So for instance, my compass is like yours. My compass is my family comes first, period. That's it. And I've got 3 teenage kids right now, all who are playing sports. They're not playing sports right now, obviously, but
the front yard.
Yeah, I think this basketball season, I counted it up, and I think my wife and I went to 82 basketball games over a 3-month stretch. And for me, before I met you, before I started getting into some of this philosophy and some of these principles, for me, sometimes 10 plus years ago, it's a hard decision. Do I go to this basketball game, or do I go to this work-related event? Now, it's real easy for me. I mean, I block off my kids' basketball games, and that nobody can calendar, period. That's just the end of it. And it's because, thanks to you and some other readings I've done, I've got some basic fundamental principles that help me make decisions. And the other thing is that I think having these principles, Ben, I think you'll agree with this, it's easy to make decisions when things are going great, but it's a lot harder when there's a lot of stress or anxiety, or it's a tough decision. And if you don't have real strong principles, sometimes, when the decision is most important, when things are going the wrong direction, and you got a really important decision to make, it's harder to make that decision correctly in the heat of the moment.
It is. I can't tell you how many times, though, that even in our leadership meetings here at the law firm, when we're like, for example, making tough decisions about, hiring or really about firing, like someone who's not lived up to your expectations. Those are hard, especially in a small firm. Everybody's friends, people's families, and yet having a set of core values for the company, having metrics, things like this, make that decision make itself. And you're exactly right. So easier to do in good times, right? But really important to have ingrained principled decision making when, as they say, the going gets tough. So I would say this: anybody can change too. Like I was not born with all of these philosophies, and I didn't sort of do deep thinking on them until probably a decade into my legal career. So that's a long time. So you're talking maybe early 30s, mid 30s. And I lived a life that was, was soccer focused, a lot of success there. But I didn't, when I was in the profession, starting in the profession, I just sort of buffeted about a lot. Like there wasn't anyone out there telling me that I could live like outside the rules that we talked about, or could push up against the barriers. So you can change. I think you change by reading, by hanging out with people, getting in mastermind groups, as we've done over the years. Listening to people who do things bigger, better, faster than you do. I think it's important.
I remember when I first started practicing law, I was at a big law firm. I went to University of Texas Law School, which is a phenomenal law school, but I would say the vast majority of the people that go there end up at these big corporate defense firms. And I have no lawyers in my family on either side as far back as I can trace. Like I was the first lawyer. And so I went to UT Law School and everybody is interviewing for these 300 and 400 person law firms. I thought that's what you were supposed to do.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's what I did. And then, yeah, you know, within a year probably, I realized that this was not the place for me. And the thing that really probably brought it home to me the most was I was getting paid the exact same amount of money as every single lawyer that came in at the same time as I came in, regardless of whether I was any better or any worse. And that was going to continue for 8 or 9 years. And, you know, I was like, if I do a good job, I feel like I should get paid a little bit more. And if I don't do as good a job, I shouldn't get paid as much. And then I went and worked at a plaintiff's firm for a couple of years. That's where I met Vuk, and the one of the owners of the plaintiff's firm is very, very successful, very good lawyer, very, very wealthy, but not very happy. And I remember thinking, I left that firm, and Vuk and I started VB Attorneys, and I was walking around Colorado one summer after I'd been there for 3 weeks with my family, and I was thinking, you know, wealth is not about money. Wealth has absolutely nothing to do with money. Wealth is about independence and freedom and being able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with who you want to do it. And that mindset was not the mindset I had, you know, when I first started out. But Ben, let me ask you this question, because I know a lot of this, especially the small business owners, are going to want to know your thoughts on this. And I know there's a lot of uncertainty and nobody can predict the future, but what do you see in the next 3, 6, 8, 12 months in terms of the small business, and how you think that's going to shape up?
Yeah, so I think Andrew Cuomo, who I've liked his press conferences because he says things like, it's really hard, we don't have all the answers, we're working, if you have a good idea, send it in, and we're going to get through it because we're New Yorkers and we're Americans, right?
Yeah.
And so I think he's getting this right, which is this: 2 things are going to happen. Number one, because there's some vaccine or something, but that's a year and a half away. But as people develop antibodies and are themselves safe to go back into the workforce, they're going to be entering. And then you're going to look at different types of businesses and say, gee, there's a law firm, for example, and they have the ability to social distance, to be safe. Why are we keeping everybody still at home? If that firm, if that business can be safe.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see this rollout, and it'll require, like a restaurant, you know, a 200-seat restaurant might have to go to 80 seats.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the economics. That might be hard, but if I'm the owner of that 200-seat restaurant, I'm figuring out today, what do the economics look like if I'm open 80 seats, right? How do I best position, again, for my security of myself and my family, but also for as the most of my employees as I possibly can.
Have you seen in the restaurant industry, Ben, that even before the pandemic, there were restaurants that were coming online that had no physical location? I think they were called pop-up restaurants or something like that. But basically, all they did was deliver. But here's the cool thing about that. Some of these restaurants had developed a culture and like a personality, and they had developed a following, even though there was no physical location for people to get into. So they had kind of already, some of these restaurants had kind of already figured out how to do that. So my view, so one of my views is, and I think you said it perfectly, and I think Governor Cuomo's done a great job because he's been very honest. So nobody can really predict the future, but if we're mentally flexible, if we're resilient, and if we're patient, I think the opportunities will eventually become obvious to all small business owners. But you've got to, I think right now you got to be mentally flexible. You got to be able to switch your mind and into a little bit different direction, particularly if you're in a small business that's really hit hard by this pandemic.
Yes, and so I think that, so a thing that everyone has control over is sort of their own personal outrage factor.
Yeah.
And of course, all of the mass media is designed to outrage you, whether it's a headline on a print newspaper or, the guys and gals talking at night and stuff. And so, again, that's a choice you can make to turn that off. Like, I'm interested in the stuff like, how do I keep myself healthy? How do I keep my family healthy?
Yeah.
There's outrage about, this organization or that organization or this policy. I really can't affect that.
Yeah.
But if I burn a lot of energy getting upset about it, that's energy that I could be using in quiet time, figuring out how do I make money with an 80 seats instead of a 200 seat restaurant, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and I think you'll see more of that. I think people are tired, growing tired of turning on the TV and watching people scream at each other.
Yeah, it's my wife and I switch back and forth between CNN and Fox News, and it's
We do.
Yeah, it's like you don't either. People are in a different reality. Well, listen, Ben, I'm cognizant of your time. We're bumping up against your deadline, so I have a few kind of quick hitter questions for you.
I'm good. My other thing got canceled.
Okay.
We do that too. If we're going to watch any TV at night, we deliberately rotate.
Yeah.
And then we actually discuss, because I usually have my college kids and high school kids. They're like, we discuss stuff. That's how you can proactively watch something like the evening talk shows. There's no news shows, the evening talk shows.
So my 16-year-old boy, he likes to mess with me sometimes. He knows that I'm not the biggest fan of the current president. And so sometimes he'll come in and say, well, my friends love Donald Trump. And I live in a neighborhood where 95% of the people vote Republican. And he likes to mess with me sometime. And oh, Dad, I think I'm going to vote for the Republicans when I become 18. And he's trying to mess with me. But I said, you know what? That's fine. I'm totally fine with that, as long as you have reasons for doing that. And you're not just doing that because that's what the crowd's doing or that's what all your friends are doing. But anyway, well, that's really cool. So let me ask you, I've got some kind of quick hitter, kind of real practical questions for you. So who have been the biggest influences in your life, whether personally or professionally or both?
Yes, so I write about a bunch of them in the book. So certainly the first guy who hired me out of law school, Bill Arts, is a now very famous medical malpractice attorney here, and just let me hang out and attend everything and absorb that way. Certainly my mom and my dad, particularly my mom, who taught us the value of kindness. So she passed away about a year ago, and she was just so kind to everybody. I think that rubbed off. I mean, you control how you respond to anything that anybody does to you, and kindness, especially when it's unexpected, when someone's trying to get your goat, like your response to your son is great, like awesome. Certainly Dan Kennedy, who I discovered probably 25 years ago, taught me a lot about, giving me permission to, even though I was a lawyer and you're supposed to think a certain way, I think, as a lawyer, give me permission to think more like a business person. Our joint friend, Sammy Chong, who I've worked with for last probably three and a half years.
I had a phone call with him yesterday.
I call him my psychologist, right? But he's an executive coach. Is really, in the last few years, as we grew and moved into new space, which you got to come see at some point. It's awesome.
For sure.
Really helped navigate that, but more importantly, helped me navigate all of the various relationships, personal relationships I have in my life.
Yeah.
So I think those, and of course my wife Sandy. You asked me like how do you raise 9 kids and do all this stuff? Well, the short answer would have been, she's awesome, right? And she's always done the books with the law firm, but she spends a lot of her time managing doctor's appointments and studies and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah. That's the same in our household. We have a third of the number of children you have, but it's still really busy. And we're both very fortunate that we married women who who are good at that kind of thing. So let me ask you, Ben, and you and I both share a love of reading. So you've read so many books that it may be hard to pick, but give us a few of your, 2 or 3 of the favorite books you've read.
Yeah, so I think, the number one book that I recommend particularly business owners, is Cal Newton's book, Deep Work.
Yeah.
Is all about turning the electronic devices off, getting rid of the interruptions, and realizing that this is really important if you're a leader, right? To be able to quiet your mind. So that's a big one. I'll tell you a book that I'm currently reading through for the second time is Brene Brown's, I think it's called Daring Leadership or Leading, I think it's called Daring Leadership. It's a really, really good book about having the courage to take on tough issues, lay them on the table. Again, whether you're leading a company, a team, a family, whatever.
A country through a pandemic. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a country through a pandemic. I mean, open and honest, having open and honest discussion about that. Of course, I'm a big Ayn Rand fan. Atlas Shrugged really it took me months to read it the first time. That really changed a lot of my thinking, sort of reinforced this whole, for me, thinking, Brian, we don't compete. We're, how could we do something together that's a win-win for both of us, on a voluntary basis? But Deep Work is really that. I mean, I recommend that book to everybody because you'll read it, you'll go, right. I spend so many hours on my devices, and I have all these. I mean, the thing I do is my kids joke, this is really only a phone and a calendar and a GPS.
Yeah.
I have no browser, no email.
Yeah.
If you text me, it doesn't ring, vibrate, or anything.
24-hour do not disturb.
Yeah, and you know what? Nobody's died, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes I get home and I don't have the milk, but I just go back out and get the milk, right? And so being deliberate about freeing up some space to just think. And for me, I'm pretty much an early riser. So I do that. They joke, they laugh at me. They take pictures of me in my house at 9:15 when I'm asleep on the couch. But I'm up at, 5 o'clock doing stuff. So I think those are some of the big important books that have been really influential for me. But I read about 40 or 50 a year. Not every book deserves to be read to the end, but and reading deliberately too, like, why is this, if I read only 3 pages, why is this in front of me today? Like, what, there are no coincidences, I don't think, in the universe. Like, why is this here? Yeah. How could I use it?
Well, I could be misremembering this, but I remember reading Deep Work by Cal Newport, and I think I recommended it to some people. I may have recommended it to you.
You may have recommended it to me.
I remember exactly when I was, like everybody in 2016 on the internet and social media constantly about this, the election that we had. And it was just crazy. It was like our first election where social media was that big a deal. And I got to the point, Ben, where I felt like I couldn't focus for more than a minute or two. So I got the book, I read the book, and I actually took my computer and put it in the closet downstairs. I work out of my home office a lot. So I didn't even have a computer in my home office for about 4 or 5 months. And I'll tell you what, it was almost like the muscle part of my brain's kind of just relaxed,
It's amazing.
Yeah, great recommendation. So a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go on about your day. What can you think of an example where something happened to you that at the time you thought was really bad that turned out to be really good?
Well, yeah. So when I was leaving the law firm I'd been with for 12 years, there was a real decision point. We had just bought a house, right? 6 months before. I wasn't totally happy there, right? And in every law firm, there's kind of money issues, and usually it's not when there's no money, it's when there's a lot of money that you get money issues. Yeah. And so I didn't think it was really bad for very long, right? But it really turned out, I went on this path to be able to grow a couple of businesses. And of course, Brian, for you and I, like, just about every time, when you sat in a courtroom knowing that you should win a case and the jury comes in and says no, that's really hard.
Yeah.
And but there's always been learning in that. But in that moment, it's really, really hard. And then I write about it in the book, driving home, and some of those days in my new practice back then, when we didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of cases, and driving home and meeting your wife at the door and saying, we lost again.
Yeah.
Really hard.
Yeah.
But time shows you, I think, the learning from all of these experiences. And so if you don't learn from tough times, then you're just not looking, okay? You're not looking carefully at what it is the circumstance taught you.
I've been keeping a journal of notes for after every trial I've had my entire career. And I tell people kind of jokingly, I say, when I win a case, the entry is normally like something to the effect of, you're awesome, you're great, you're a great trial lawyer, keep doing what you're doing. And then when I lose a case, it's 5 pages of notes, this is what you need to work on this, change this, work on this. I literally learn almost nothing from succeeding in trial. I learn way more when I lose a trial, which happens to all of us, by the way.
And what a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you even, do you remember like how you even had the idea to start that? Because you would have been young, right?
I've always been a journaler and a writer. I don't remember exactly where I got the idea, but it's, I've got I'm 47. I've got about 22 years worth of personal journals and professional journals. And, before every trial, about a month before I go to trial, I go and look through the notes. Oh yeah, man, 5 or 6 years ago, I wrote that down, and I need to remember it for this case.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I really appreciate your time, and like I said in the introduction, your time is extremely valuable. You're one of the foremost legal marketing in general for small businesses, consultant, coach, philosopher, and for you to give me this much time is a real treat. So I really, really appreciate it. Before I let you go, though, tell people where they can find you on the internet or social media if they're looking to find out more about you.
Yeah, so the law firm is Ben Glass Law, so you can go to benglasslaw.com. The consulting company is greatlegalmarketing.com. If you just Google Ben Glass attorney, we're pretty well positioned and popular with Mr. Google. And go and buy the book. The book is a philosophy book. The book is a life book. It is positioned for lawyers. It's got tactics for lawyers. But it really is about thinking about your life, figuring out what the difference is between where you are and where you'd like to be, visioning that as concretely as you can, right? No matter if you think you can't afford it, you don't know who's going to help you get there, visioning what perfect would look like for you, giving yourself permission to think that way. And then I believe that your mind will just see the opportunities, as your mind will see the opportunities as we come out of this pandemic to grow.
Isn't that amazing how that, if you get your principles and your mindset right, then opportunities just kind of appear out of nowhere, right? Well, good. Well, Ben, any final words of advice to any of the small business owners or individuals that are worried about what the future holds, worried about the pandemic? Any last things
The last thing I would say is, if you're not in some sort of a group, you should start a group. You should look around at your other small business owners in your community and say, hey, how could we get together? Either you're bringing your chairs over to the cul-de-sac and you're sitting 6 feet apart, right? Or you're getting on some Zoom call and saying, what's working, what's not, what are you reading, who are you listening to, okay? Because that will strengthen you. And there's a leadership vacuum in the country. And so don't wait to be asked to lead. Lead, just lead. People will love you for it.
That's great, Ben. Well, thank you very much. Brian. And let's stay in touch, okay?
Yes, sir. Thanks, man.
All right, man.
You've been listening to Lessons from Leaders with Brian Beckcom. If you've enjoyed this week's interview, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and keep up with the latest episodes. You can also connect with Brian through his firm at vbattorneys.com.